Okay, so I am going to share about Jeremiah 29 4 through 14. Jeremiah sent a letter from Jerusalem to Babylon to the priests, prophets, and other people who had been exiled from Jerusalem. What I find really interesting about these scriptures is just how God is telling them to enjoy life. It's not really where they belong. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this, but they are to settle down and trust His timing. And I definitely see a parallel there with being Christians in this world, being Christ followers and loving God and not belonging, being in a way exiled. We're part of God's kingdom and we are ambassadors, and the definition of that is someone who acts as a representative or accredited diplomat sent by a country as its official representative to a foreign land. And I'm thinking that land is the King of Kings land, where the King of Kings resides. And so, like, what an honor to be able to represent our God. And so the scriptures talk about, it says, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon." First of all, let me just say He carried them, and I very much want to believe He didn't pick them up and throw them into this new land, but that they still had a level of access to Him. So I love that the Bible uses the word carried. It doesn't say dragged or kicked out. It says carried into exile. So yeah, let's see what else. The commands that God gives them is to build and settle and plant and marry and increase. And He doesn't want them constantly worrying about the future. I think it's really easy for us to only give work and school and our neighbors and our church part of our hearts, because especially in these days, I know as a parent, I'm like, oh my gosh, should I move to Europe because the food there is less poisoned? Constantly thinking about, where should we go next? And it's hard to give your whole heart to where you are if you're in that state of mind and that state of I guess worry instead of trust. So I think that He wants them to enjoy life because He wants them to trust Him. He's involved in our placement. The scripture talks specifically about placing them, and there's a purpose in our placement. So there was a purpose for them, there's a purpose for us where we're placed. And then as far as the scriptures talking about praying for peace of the city that He carried them into, I think that we can so easily forget to do that. There's worship songs about it. You're the God of the city. And we know that we're taught and that we should be praying for our leaders, but I think God knows our hearts are similar to this, and deep down wondering what's the next move, what's the next step. And so just being grateful for the people in our lives and the place that we live and for the land that we do have. Another point I see, do not listen to false prophets and lies. Obviously, there are a lot of lies going on out there with media and, whatever, false religions and thus saith the Lord. And in being able to filter all those voices out, I think the best way for us to be able to filter all those voices out is to just be in the Word and to focus on God. And just to know that not all of those, especially like, just promises of what will happen in the future, those are not always from God. Let's see, what did I put here? I thought of Acts 17:25-27 in the New Testament, and how that seemed to really parallel with the scripture. From one man he made all nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and boundaries of their lands. And I think that's comforting for sure, to know that he marked that out, or that he maps that out for us, and he's looking down and seeing this map. And I think as adoptees into the promise of God, that applies to us also. I have another point. In these scriptures in Jeremiah, it talks about God fulfilling the promises to bring them back to their homeland after 70 years. That was in the letter. He plans to give them hope and a future. I think it's really cool that God was so specific with Jeremiah, that he gave them that specific timeline so that they could just relax and settle in and not constantly be wondering when. I think there's a level of trust, to being planted somewhere, and also just, when you travel, or when we're called to go somewhere else, to know that wherever we go, he is with us, that he has a plan. And that's what I got out of it. So I hope that it had some type of flow, that it made sense. Thanks.